Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to Healing the Spirit. I am really thrilled to be sharing with you this really potent conversation that I had with my guest Pilar Lesko on the topic of money. Money is such an interesting topic, right? I haven't actually talked a lot about it on this podcast because I'm still learning how to have a healthy relationship with money. I feel like most of us don't have healthy relationships with money. And also, to be really completely honest and blunt with you, I haven't found a lot of practitioners and teachers whose teaching on money resonated with me and landed in my body in a way that I can actually engage with. And Pilar is one of the rare exceptions to this. I find that Pilar brings so much nuance, so much integrity, clarity, and creativity and authenticity into her work. And I just really deeply admire her work. And it's really helped open up for me all these portals to what am I actually working with here? When I am worried about pricing my offering, or when I'm worried about charging, or when I'm worried about, here's something I will bring up, right? When I felt that rising heat, when somebody pays me and I'm like, I have to spend this right away, right? When I felt that, what is actually going on? And many of you know that I am trained in energy work, and it is truly mind-blowing to me how Pilar has stewarded this work and created such a seamless blend of what it means to work with money through energy work. It is chef's kiss. Amazing. So if you resonate with Pilar's work, which I think you will feel into, as you listen to this conversation, I highly recommend that you check out her offering, which is open for enrollment until the end of the week, called Money Medicine. And Money Medicine is such a beautiful, gentle, grounded, potent offering. And Pilar and her team has graciously offered a special discount code for listeners of this podcast, which is $111 off with the code MONEYSPIRIT. And so if you are finding resonance in Pilar's work and you're curious to learn more, I recommend that you check out her newsletter, you follow her on social media, and you check out this course because maybe it would be the right fit for you. All right, here is my conversation with Pilar Lesko. All right. Hello, Pilar. Welcome to Healing the Spirit. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, I want to introduce people the way that I talked about your work on Instagram, which is that I have historically not really liked to engage with people's teachings about money, but I have found your offering to just be so beneficial for me and so wise and grounded and inclusive. And so thank you for being here. I cannot wait to talk to you.
Thank you.
So I like to begin with just kind of situating us and the listeners to where you're at this moment. Usually the way that I like to ask this question is, who do you feel, know, or sense yourself to be in this present moment?
This is such a good question. Because in this present moment, I feel like I'm mid mid process with getting more access to parts of myself that are really natural. That and this actually very much connects to money and business, that like any parts of ourselves that are authentic, got muddled up with energies that aren't, that I kind of tucked away as not good and needs to go to the back of the room. Um, and I'll give you an actual, like, verbatim example of what these energies are, because this is a
Mhm.
funny story. This is not important at all, but I recently discovered that I was calculating numerology life path numbers incorrectly. So, so, and again, like, just a super kind of mundane thing, wasn't that big of a deal because my entire identity wasn't wrapped up in my life path number. But I'm super into numerology and systems. So I had thought I was a 36-9.
Mm.
I'm actually an 18-9. And the vast difference between those, and I'm reading this to my fiance, I'm like, 36-9s are, and I start saying all these terms like more shy, very artistic, very visionary. And he was like, okay, like, not agreeing. And then I was like, 18-9s are CEOs, like, really want to build big things, want to be leader. And he was like, that's you. That
Yeah.
one's you. And it was such a great, like, silly moment to
Mm.
encapsulate a process I've been in, that these are the exact qualities I needed an external system or symbol to say these, even if you're still calculating it wrong,
Yeah.
you need to see these qualities in you, because these
Mhm.
are the qualities that were very natural when you were young, that along the way got mixed up with things that you've now sort of shamed and punished and tucked
Mhm.
away. And I've been in this process of inviting those qualities back in after long periods of wrestling with them, saying like, no, no, not this way, or this looks bad. And I've just been giving them the space to come back,
Yeah.
like, in their innocence.
Mhm. I love that, Pilar. I love that. And this is reminding me of something we've been talking about in Eden, which is your, I guess, I don't know if you would call Eden your membership um,
Mhm.
group, about living systems, about how systems of knowledge are also living. And um, yeah, I think there's always something so poignant about those moments where we think we're one thing within the system, but then we realize, oh, I calculated it wrong, or actually I've been misunderstanding that the whole time, because there's something really potent about knowing exactly, or having experienced this, like, oh, I am this way, but then actually you're the other way. Yeah. Mhm. What's your
Yeah.
sun moon rising in astrology?
Virgo, Taurus, Virgo.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. um, I'm curious to hear a little bit about your past, whatever feels present for you to share in terms of how you come to interact with energy work, with mysticism, with money work. Mhm.
Hmm. Well, it all began when I was born. Um, okay, energy work, mysticism, money work.
Mhm.
So I can actually kind of encapsulate this all in my early life. because energy work, I don't know who I would have been if my mom hadn't passed away when I was 2 and my childhood hadn't then been what it was, which was really, really abusive and chaotic and traumatic. But it was because of those things that I think my psychic gifts were more available to me and I wanted to interact with them. Because in a lot of ways, that was sort of all I had to feel a sense of safety and community was my connection to energy
Mm.
and how I could use it and how I could use it to feel connected to my mom and how I could use it to understand why my parents were the way they were.
Mhm.
It was almost like it was both a friend, but a survival mechanism, that connection to energy and to being able to identify it, but then also to recognize that I had control over some of it. I could move stuff around. I could do some things with it. Um, so that started really, really young. And energy work is so funny now because almost everything I'm like, I feel like I used to do this. I feel like when I was little, I did a version of this. And now I just have like cool languaging and frameworks for something I feel like I knew on some
Mm.
level.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mysticism, mysticism seems like it was always going to find me because even in this really crazy childhood, um, there was like Marianne Williamson books around the house that I would pick
Mm.
up and read and like um so both of my parents, the ones who raised me, my dad and my stepmom are Pisces. So our house was full of that energy.
Mm.
Um both the destructive parts and the beautiful parts. There
Mhm.
was a lot of access to spirit all around. Um I've gone to only religious schools. I've only gone to Catholic schools. And though I say that, and I know everyone's initial reaction is like, oh, that must have been horrible. Yes. And I only went to schools where we were required to prioritize a connection to God.
Mm.
And I remember very young sitting in church, Catholic mass, just bawling. Not because I felt so connected to the dogma of Catholicism,
Yeah.
but because I thought it was so cool that we all got together to worship something we couldn't see
Mhm.
and to have faith in something we couldn't see. So when I look back at my life, and if I do in one system have a 12th house stellium, mysticism was everywhere. And
Yeah.
I could find it everywhere. It was finding me, but then I could see it for what it was.
Mhm.
And then to your third, money work. Money also started so young because it was such a big pain point in our house and very very young I started watching money as this sort of vehicle for projection. And a lot of
Mhm.
that projection was actually put onto me. And I,
Mm.
I remember being young and watching how money, that this thing that we barely even saw, you barely even see money.
Yeah.
It's not like money's just around the house, money's at dinner with you. You don't see it. It's just these streams moving throughout everything, especially now with how virtual things have become. But
Mhm.
I remember being like, this has so much control over everyone in the house. And I
Mm.
also remember recognizing the things people are experiencing because of it don't actually have to do with it. But
Mm.
it seems like it does.
Yeah.
So all that being said, so much of that, to like be really honest, so
Mhm.
much of that, so much of those ways of relating to money, because they started so young for me, I was around them so young. I know, just I absorbed them because I remember coming into being a teenager and maybe having like a bit more wherewithal. And I was so crazy with money. I almost looked at it as like this point of rebellion, like way to
Mm.
get back at what happened in my childhood. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
I wow. I have so many questions about this. First of all, I was really struck by what you wrote. I think maybe this was in one of your copies about nature as the teacher of money. And I was feeling this as you were talking about coming into energy work and also your relationship with money as a child or as a young person. Um, Tell us more about that. Tell us more about what you mean by nature as the teacher of money, because I think usually this is what I'm perceiving, right, as we're speaking. When people think about money, they think that money is this very unnatural thing, right? And so to put the two together is almost like, pew, you know, mind blown, right?
Yeah, that that connection started forming for me as a teenager and in my young 20s. And it's interesting because I haven't really made this point of connection until we're talking just now, but
Mm.
that connection really started to come online for me when I was at my most rebellious with money. Like, most just like, can I cuss on here?
Yeah. Yes.
I was going to say my most like, fuck the system.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
this isn't real. I was just like a wild banshee for a while when I was a teenager. And I included money in that.
Mm.
Um, I just I didn't think it was worthy of respect, so I didn't respect it.
Mm.
And did things that were completely disrespectful to it, but also to like in service just to kind of disrespecting the systems I found myself in.
Mhm.
Um, it was when I started working with psilocybin that I started making I mean, I say but I feel like psilocybin was like, okay, you have a lot of shit with money. Like, and you're headed down a pretty dark path with your relationship to it.
Mm.
So here's something you understand and revere as the ultimate system,
Mm.
nature.
Mhm.
Like, you have the ultimate respect for this system. And here's the ways that these two things can mirror each other. And here's the ways that these don't have to be so different. And it started with really kind of peculiar, random things. Like, I had one journey with psilocybin, and the whole theme of the journey was nothing is truly free.
Mm.
And I sat there kind of, I mean, journeyed there because I'm sure I got up and stuff. But the whole thing I came out of that journey with was so much in nature looks free. We're like, oh, this tree is just giving us apples and it just gives them to us freely and we just get to take them, and that's how things should be in the world. Like, everything should be free. It almost reminded me of like what Burning Man is hoping to accomplish
Mm.
with the trade and barter. And I have nothing against those styles because, first of all, I tried them. I think they're great. I don't think we're there yet. But
Mm.
I love the intention.
Mhm.
So um in this one journey, it was one of my like first ones around money. I just watched how everything takes something. Everything to make an apple, for a tree to make an apple, there are so many components and inputs that have to go in to making that apple. And we might be able to walk up to the apple and pick it up and go, wow, this is free. But there was actually so much nature-based currency that went into creating that, and we miss that in our consistent idealizing of, oh look, it's free, and like free is better. And I saw how interesting and muddied that can get when we then bring that into commerce. It was yeah, it was very interesting. My mind went probably through 50 different like routes just looking at this. And at the time too, it should be noted, I was primarily hanging out with like Burning Man, anarchist style people. So to have a tree show me this whole everything should be free thing, this doesn't work. This doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's making me remember something that you also wrote about how there's this saying, right, in our culture, money is the root of evil. But then you wrote, money, rather thinking about money as the vehicle and as the container for that collective evil. Say more about that, because that's also really striking to me. And I think that there was something about, to me, it almost feels like what you're just saying has to do with the misunderstanding. Like there's kind of the story that we've collectively latched onto about money, and we've built relationship with money based on these stories that are actually not really rooted or has been actively disconnected from nature. And therefore money being the vehicle. That's kind of how I'm receiving it right now. Would you say that that's true?
Your question, like this question, perfectly encapsulates why this tree showed me we're not, humans are not at the place where everything can be free yet. And that's what you're saying. And it's that, so this idea, these idealized systems of commerce, they require one very tall ask. And that is for us as humans to interact with them with, insert whatever it is here, awareness, integrity, but that means different things to different people, capacity, generosity, kindness. We're not there as a species. And how do we know that? Because of quotes like money is the root of all evil and just follow the money. Money is such a great reflection point for where consciousness is at, because money is willing to be the thing that we project all of our deepest fears and pains onto. And it's also willing to hold those while we blame it, instead of going deep enough into that engagement to recognize it has nothing to do with money at a certain point. And I have this quote that's been coming to me for this round of money medicine. And it's, when we engage our money experiences to the point that they become free of money, so that pain disconnects from that bill and it's just that pain, then money can finally be free. And to me, that's what money wants.
Oh my God.
I know, it came to me and I was like, oh.
Okay, I kind of want to have you reiterate it again. So this idea, right, of working with the pain associated with money and kind of, okay, and also I'm just going to insert my experience here with money medicine, where we work with the energy of that pain. We work with our own personal narrative and content around that pain. And when that happens, money as a concept, as a vehicle, as an archetype itself is almost like then liberated to do what it's supposed to do.
Yes. Like systems in nature don't have that personal story function in the same way we do of pain, fear, meaning, story, and emotion. So when you look at nature, everything is liberated to flow as it wants to naturally. Obviously not across the board, because, you know, things we come in and interact with it, and just us as a component greatly changes things. But I used to farm, and the majority of farming I did was permaculture style farming. And the whole premise with permaculture is we as humans can have our gardens mimic the wild, and they will be much better and will do much better, not just for us, but also for the ecosystem. And it'll be a win-win-win versus this monocropping style where I mean, if you look at the way we farm, it's hilarious. It's like it's like the opposite of wild. And obviously that's a huge ideal to have with money, but just to have that context of what's possible when even a little bit of it is liberated, and then you get to transform something that you had previously ascribed to money, and you get that experience of one day looking at your bank account and being like, I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm taken care of. This isn't doing anything to me. Those experiences, to me, those money experiences that like the world will never know about, that's money gets to be free.
Wow. Thank you. I think, yeah, this is where this is leading me to. So I remember in module 1 of Money Medicine, you were talking about the trope of transcendence. And I was just like, we need to talk about this. Because you mentioned a few things like, and this is part of why I think sometimes people working with the energy of money within spiritual spaces feel off to me, because people would say things like, money is just a loving neutral energy, right? Or like, the universe is abundant and so are you, you know? And then like this one is my favorite, actually. Like, you need to work on your scarcity mindset. So I want to talk about each one of these with you. Like the first one being, you know, money is just a loving neutral energy, right? And what I'm hearing and what I've been kind of learning from you is this idea, right? And we talk about this a little bit when I was learning energy work as well. This idea of like coming into neutrality with things. But I think oftentimes that can be problematic in the spiritual language when we talk about neutrality by sacrificing or demonizing our personal experiences. Because the reality is that things happen within the body, right? Things happen in your language within the personal range. And so there is kind of this tension that I think we need to, this maybe not tension, complexity, right? That we are always holding between neutrality and personal range. And so this idea of money as a loving neutral energy is actually a kind of an incomplete picture. Do you want to, say more about that?
Yeah, this is like so rich. And it actually, when you look into it, paints a really cool picture of just the journey of consciousness and our relationships to the spiritual path. Because before I can even go into each one, we have to look at like, why is this even here and so popular? And why why is it the predominant teaching? Why are people so comfortable with it? Like, beyond the fact that it's a nice like bottle when you're scared, like it is, it's like a binky, you're like, ah. but
Yes.
but like the bigger picture, here's one of the ways I see it. When you go back not that long ago, even to it was really, really popular even in like the 60s and 70s when yoga was coming to the West. Most spiritual traditions being practiced, especially by people in the West, were transcendence based. And it was really common. It was really popular. We had a lot of stuff coming from the East. And I always say, like, you have to also recognize that the way they were doing it in the East and then that traveling over here and getting disseminated, it's like a game of telephone. And also, we're not those people. So things are going to be lost. And also, certain even like prerequisites you would need from like the bloodline or even just in your aura to interact with those and have them work. We don't have a lot of those. So a lot of what tended to happen, and this wasn't a bad thing, this was just what was up, is people were practicing transcendence-based spirituality, and in that they were having to abandon a lot of their personal experience in order to achieve this like alleged enlightenment.
Yes.
And that was common, and most people were doing it, and it was just what was on the table. Now we have access to more. I believe there are more people on the planet now who probably had a lot of lifetimes in transcendent-based spirituality who are like, okay, what's next? Like,
Yeah.
is there more? Because jumping or whitewashing over my personal experience in order to get to this kind of like everything is love plane of reality, I know how to do that, and I'm bored with it, and it also feels like I'm abandoning things that my soul's actually really interested in exploring. So money teachings, especially like money is a loving neutral energy, I'm sure we can go back and find like kind of the first wave of personal development people saying that, and that's coming out of that context. So when I see what's going on now, to try to simplify something that is really complex, is we have more people now than we did then who, even if they don't consciously recognize it, can feel the effects of that abandonment and are like, this isn't it. This isn't it. And neutrality, the way I've been taught it, is it's not that we're now swinging away from that. We're not swinging away like neutrality is bad, but it's that, and this is like the cool nuance that upsets people because it's not black and white anymore, is we can practice cultivating a percentage or a semblance of neutrality while still honoring our personal experience. And in that, we have to recognize that we'll probably never be seeing something as it is, but it actually really enhances our personal experience to practice seeing something as it is, and then notice what that brings up for us and engage it. And then we look back at that thing and we're like, oh, I see it more as it is. And we can just go on and on and on doing that and just growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. I really love this because what's coming up for me is how much working with energy, right? Not just money, but I think money is such a great thing to work with because it's the thing that people are often not neutral about, right? So it like lights up a bunch of stuff. I think what I love about working with energy is that it is kind of a reiterative process, right? Like you don't just like clear it all out at one fell swoop. You know, you don't just like clear all your karmic contracts in like one fell swoop. Like you kind of work with it and integrate the insights you receive like as you walk your path, and then life. This is also something that I really appreciate from your teaching, which is that life will meet you wherever you're at and show you where you still need to do the work, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's nature.
Yeah.
You're describing nature of it. It's never done, but it's always enjoying itself in that creation, sustenance, and destruction cycle. Like it, and it's funny because as you say this, it's making me think about how what you're describing, that it doesn't work like that, where you're like, okay, all karma cleared, I'm good now. Like that is often in the context of money teachings. There is often, whether it's verbally or psychically articulated, this sort of promise that if you XYZ, you'll get to XYZ with money, and it will work in like a black and white way. And I watch people, and have watched people, deeply struggle with, it's not working for me like I felt like it would based on how you were talking about it.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the part where it gets funny, because when you're willing to engage it the way we're talking about it, there's no end, there's no winning, there's no I totally got it now. Like, this is it.
Yeah, exactly. And so this to me is bringing us to your next trope of transcendence that you brought up, which is this idea of the universe is abundant. And this is something you wrote that really stuck out to me. You said the exploration of lack is as sacred and meaning-filled as the exploration of abundance. Exploring lack does not take away from all of life expanding in all directions, but rather generates more of that expansion. Engaging lack is what creates the space for a true experience of abundance, an experience that exists within your capacity. Wow. Yeah. Is there anything that feels alive for you to share about that?
Yeah. All you have to do is take a look at what's going on the planet on any given day to see that we are deeply, as a species, exploring things like lack, destruction, harm, scarcity, poverty. All you have to do is live here. And again, these more transcendent style teachings encourage a looking away from, to stay in abundance, and encourage a whitewashing of what's going on, to stay in abundance and all that stuff. There's just this great encouragement of a lot of avoidance and abandonment.
Yeah.
It's difficult though. It's such a difficult thing to, one, engage skillfully, and then two, within that engagement, allow it to bring you deeper into life, not further away from it. Because now that we're talking about, like, I always joke, it's and there are a lot of old systems who teach this beautifully. I think like Vajrayana Buddhism is one of them, and it's the universe is loving and abundant, and it's also wrathful and ferocious, and full of fury and just wrath. And with money, when you bring money into it, and this is where it gets even more nuanced, what tends to happen is we have the camp of people who are like, don't pay attention to it, or get yourself back into a high vibration so you can be a receiver of money. But then we also have on the other pole the camp of people who are paying attention to it to the point that they're absorbed in it, who, for them to even think about trying to manifest money, they can't even do that, because they're like, there's all these people with nothing. Like, the shame and the stuff that comes up around privilege and harm, etc. So there's these two poles, and we see them all over the internet. Like
Yes, we do.
And yeah, and I would take so long to like fully explain this, but what I'll say is, and you know, this is easy to say but difficult in concept. How do we engage with horrible things that are happening without becoming absorbed in them and becoming almost eaten by them, and allow that engagement to bring us deeper into our dance with life, and through that potentially our dance with money. So I'm trying to think of an example. Just because an entire part of the world, or even someone you know dearly, is deeply exploring scarcity, that doesn't mean that that's not in service to something and ultimately sacred and meaning filled. And it also doesn't mean that you're not allowed to explore abundance.
Yes.
There's so many things to say. And if we're talking about this camp, if we're talking about like avoiding at all costs, you know, the medicine is different for everyone. Their medicine is going to be more of a willingness to engage with what is. Whereas over here, it might be a need for, it's okay to create some separateness from scarcity and horror and pain and harm. That doesn't make you a bad person. You're not going to stop engaging with it. You're just going to get more access to yourself, so that what you're engaging with can actually create some sort of fruit, and you can reap something and become something because of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. With these two poles, here's how I see it. No one's creating fruit. No, there's no fruit dropping from total absorption into, and then like a way, like a collapsing under the weight of. And there's also no fruit from total avoidance and abandonment.
Yeah. And this is making me think about like our relationship as a culture, and therefore filtered into our personal relationships with expansion and contraction, right? I think a lot of teaching around money is kind of oriented towards working with people's pain points around contracting around money in order to bring them into this massive, forever spring, eternal summer expansion, right? And so, I don't know. I guess here's what I'm curious about, to hear your thoughts. I think that a lot of people are so scared of going into our contractions, right? Even when we're talking about like working with underworld energies, when we're talking about, you know, things like money, which can feel like underworld energies, we're so bought into kind of this hero's journey story. And I wonder if, what would you say to the parts of us that are really scared of that contraction? And how can we maybe, if such a thing exists, cultivate a bit more skill to work with the contractions that naturally happens, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this isn't what I would say to that person who's like wanting to just begin to work with it, but this is coming up as like a context. To me, this is so representative of our avoidance of death, and that these incarnations are finite and things die. Um, you find the avoidance of death, not even just the experience of it, but the energy of it trickling into everything. And what you're saying, this avoidance of contraction or coming out of spring and summer, autumn is decomposition, winter is dying. It's that avoidance of death deeply feeds into this illusion that we're not nature in some ways, or that we're not in collaboration with nature. But then to someone who's just wanting to begin engaging with it, I would probably start with, what's your relationship to feeling safe? And that doesn't have to, that you don't want to go big. You don't want to like start big. Just what's your how consistently are you feeling safe? Are you ever feeling safe? Are you, what are you, you're here in a body on earth? That's scary. Like just starting, just cultivating some point of safety, even if it's just like the recognition. I almost never feel safe. So, and that's okay. But rather than trying to expand with my soil as something that's lacking safety, I'm going to pair in some things to help the soil. Yeah. Because someone who's not wanting to work with contractions on a really simple level, okay, fear, pain, not safe.
Yeah. I love that. Before we recorded, we were talking about how I have Mars in Capricorn and you have Mars in Cancer, and I feel like you just gave us the wisdom of Mars in Cancer, because it's true. You know, I do think that there's something about that fear of contraction that is deeply tied to lack of safety, and so it's not really about plowing through it, but it's about tending to like the soil that can enable the tree to grow, in a sense.
That constant expansion is to me a plowing through something, because that's not natural. So something, and I've seen this enough in my work to recognize that when that's happening, something is being overridden. Something is being abandoned in order to keep that up. And it's often a very deep thing. It's often very, very deep. And perhaps has been there driving that energy for so long that you don't even remember who you are without it.
Yeah. So, what do you think people mean when people say the energy of scarcity? and how do we kind of work with this concept, right? This idea, because I think so much about so many of the teachings that are available out there about working with money pinpoints to this idea of scarcity, right? And that scarcity is almost kind of like this block, you know, that prevents us from accessing money or having proximity to money. And to me, I guess what's coming up is it's also making me think about this idea of being a steward of money. But I'm still trying to kind of figure out what the connection between scarcity and stewardship are.
Yeah. That's okay. I can see points of connection, but that's such a cool like exploration because there are totally points of connection. And what's so interesting is you're connecting the first movement in money medicine, which is scarcity, to the last one, which is being entrusted by life, which to me is stewardship. So you're literally like Aries, Pisces, like farthest away, but then right next to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, the first question you asked was, what do I think people mean when they say the energy of scarcity? I don't think people know what they think they mean because I think it's so funny because in money work, there's like all these words and it's so funny because we do this with so many things, but I'll just like hone in specifically on money. There's like scarcity, debt, insert other ones, bills, overdrafting. There's all these words that are like they're so bad. Like when you say them, everyone's like, ooh, debt is bad. Like it has such a big projection field. When people are talking about scarcity in the context of this more transcendent style money work, what I'm often just getting is it's like this, okay, I'm going to break this down fully because otherwise I won't really do it justice. It's almost this like pointing at this energy to eradicate. But when you're having the experience of it, it's not an energy separate from you. Most of the time when someone's having an experience of scarcity, it tends to inflame and fill their entire aura to where all they're feeling is fear. And it's often fear running at a survival level. So then they're like, this is what the teacher said is bad. And I need to do affirmations like to make it go away.
Yeah.
And so I recently came up with this metaphor to apply to lack and scarcity. When a child is, in my experience, when a child is having a temper tantrum or is doing something let's just say a temper tantrum, and you're in such deep resistance to that temper tantrum, and then you also try and make it stop, whether that's like band-aiding it or being like, no, don't cry, or pretending to ignore it, whatever the method is, if you're deeply vibrating in resistance to it, the child is most likely going to pick up on that and get bigger and louder. One of my teachers says, what you resist, you become. Not what you resist persists, but what you resist, you become.
Yeah.
So if a child's having a temper tantrum and you're like, okay, this is bothering me, I'm gonna, and this is more the practice. I'm going to create some space from this temper tantrum. I'm going to engage it as an energy separate from me, but that's happening right in front of me. And I'm just gonna let it get as big as it wants. I'm gonna let it like just kind of do whatever it needs to do. And we've all seen this. The energy flows and there's a transition from tantrum to maybe just sad crying, from tantrum to yawning, from tantrum to I'm tired. That's, to me, version 1 is what we do with scarcity. It's there and we're in deep resistance to it and we're very enmeshed with it, but then we're like, go away, and like trying to do something else. And I do this in scarcity, the free gift, and money medicine. The place we start is that separateness, letting it get as big as it wants, and then going, how much of this is mine? Because the number one issue I see with scarcity is so much of what gets kicked up doesn't belong to us. So then to try to process through our scarcity, our moms, our dads, our entire lineages, our neighborhoods is overwhelming and we feel completely immobilized. And this is why it's so common when scarcity comes up for people to go into their preferred trauma response: freeze, fight, flee, try and make it go away. So just the simple practice of let's get it down to what's mine is such a relief for people, because now you're just looking at this energy where it's like, I know this energy. I know this energy. This is that little energy that tells me this when I go to do that. Or this is that feeling in my body when I go to buy something. And it might not feel good. You might not like it, but now we're getting somewhere, because now you can start engaging more of what's yours instead of trying to run from the world's scarcity or run into the world's scarcity.
Yeah, this is always something that like really, I remember when I first started learning energy work, this really blew my mind, which is that like, wow, we can in our energetic field be carrying all of these people's stories, right? And it's like that one time when my mom told me about that experience with her mom, right, that I've been carrying for like 30 something years, right? And it's, I think this process of like clearing and seeing that, it's almost like the image that is coming to my mind is like you're wearing so many layers of jackets and you're like, oh, actually I can take this off, and then like whatever's left is like my own piece of clothing, which I know how to work with.
Yes. And this is, to me, this is when scarcity and money gets this chance that they're never given, which is like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on with you? Like, who are you and who am I in relation to you? And I've never, ever just given you a place to sit down. I've always it mixed you up with 100 other energies and then tried to push you away. And this is where we get into like, this is across systems, across healing modalities of like, can I make a home for this too? But the connotation I like to give is it can be really beneficial, especially for sensitive people, for people who identify as empaths, for people who feel like it's easy to take on a lot, to give that thing a home, but work with it where the home is in front of you and you're looking into it versus your body is a home for everything. And that's kind of a simulation, because it's still living in your body. You're not fully removing something from your body, but you're creating this simulation of space. And what that usually does is, let's say scarcity in your body was sitting on top of grief. Okay, now some of that sadness can maybe start to come up as you're working with scarcity as this energy separate from you. So it's not, full separation is never possible. We're interdependent, but that simulation creates even more space in your system for everything scarcity was the container for.
Yeah, and I think that space also becomes this really creative, like liminal space, right? Or like this creative canvas where maybe you're not just pushing things away, but you're kind of making new drawings out of it, or like in the world of collage, and you're kind of like cutting up these little pieces and you're creating like a new piece,
Yes. So Pisces. Yes.
I'm curious to hear, because I think this is connected. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about validation, because I think validation is also so prominent in people's experiences working with money, because what I've observed within myself and also a lot of people, I think maybe more people who are socialized as men in my lineage than the women, about money is like this idea of like needing to validate like one's existence, right? Like I need to validate my existence through, or like prove my worthiness through feeding my family, making a certain amount of money, and then also getting validation from my dad, right? Or that energy was like very strong, I think. I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts about this. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have so many. And it's not something I included in money medicine because I mean, I don't even want to act like I intentionally excluded it, but I can see right now, like, money and its relationship to gender roles could be a whole other program.
Yes.
Like literal program you take, and it's a whole set of programs that we're all working out.
Yeah.
I'm going to share about like some of my personal experiences with this, with the disclaimer that they're my personal experiences and I haven't spent a lot of time turning them into something that could be taught free of a lot of my pictures.
Yeah.
So, you're right in that. I think so cool because like there's that kind of primal provider energy, and you even said feeding the family, that gets attached to the masculine, or I shouldn't say it gets attached, that's a part of masculine consciousness. Then in comes money, and of course that becomes the currency that represents provisions. I'm in a relationship, and I would love to just write articles and teach on this one day. I don't think I'm ready. I'm in a long-term serious relationship where within the first few years, I became the quote provider of money. And we intentionally, I think we knew it was going to bring up a lot, but we decided like, let's have a setup, where I'm the sole breadwinner, which I always think about the word breadwinner. It's so funny. Like just the word breadwinner, where I'm the one providing, quote, the money. And this is what it's become. He gets to, and this is what I find so cool. What he has naturally ended up doing in that free space, aside from creating art and just enjoying his life, is it's almost like his body has primally taken him back to what provision means to him, free of the currency of money, which is fishing and hunting and planting the garden and fixing the cars and working on things around the house. And he's doing all those things, but then he's also creating art, and he's also resting a lot. And he's also doing a lot of things that people would be like, that's not what the man should be doing. And we've had this crazy journey, separate and individually, of what that lights up for people. And his is a whole different journey than mine, because he is constantly getting asked by other men what he does for work. And we talk about it all the time. It triggers so much shit when he just tells the truth of what the situation is.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool because we've like, there's so many layers here. It looks like I'm making the money, but we're making the money through me. And when I try to start making the money like a more masculine style, money goes away. And when I let myself be more like a conduit, or like a window for it to come through, it flows, which is more my style, more of a feminine, collaborative, interdependent style. It's flowing through. And then with him, I've gotten to tap into feeling resourced by his providership, free of money, which is a really trippy experience of like, I am so taken care of by you. And it's not because on the linear plane, money is coming through you, but because of all these other things. And then also on a plane, how you're in collaboration with how the money is coming and why it's coming. And we've created this, like, we're like working on this really absurd, but like totally natural for us, like interdependent ecosystem where everything's flowing together. And everything's providing for everything. And like the cats are involved, the garden's involved. But I bring all this up because you specifically said like that male or masculine programming around validation and currency.
Yeah.
I think that is getting shaken up because we're alive on the planet for the first time, and I don't know how long, or maybe the first time ever, where more women and female identifying people are making more than men, and male identifying. Yeah. So the snow globe's already getting shaken up. And now to me, it's a matter of like, what's our natural style? Free of the programming, and just that question, and then to even try to embody it, you could work on that the rest of your life because you're going to bring everyone's shit up about those roles.
Right. Wow. This has been amazing, Pilar. I just love talking to you so much. I am curious, is there any question I haven't asked that you kind of want to talk about? Or is there anything you want to talk about before, as we're approaching a close?
You have asked the perfect question. This has been like compliments to you. I don't know if you practice this, but you're interviewing, the questions, the flow has been like perfect, like the exact things that need to be said to bring out the next right thing to add to the picture. Do you like, is this just who you are?
Yeah, before I had a podcast, I think this is just who I was. And then, I was like, it's time to have a podcast.
Yeah. Such a great flow. I don't have anything else. It's important to say that was such a great look at like both macro and micro of so many energies around the money experience.
Yeah, I have just been so grateful to find your work and to learn from you, and I feel like, I want to encourage everyone to find all of the things and just kind of join your world. I'm curious if you want to share how people can find you. What are some of the best ways? I know Money Medicine is starting like the end of this week, right? Is that right? For this round?
It's the doors close on Sunday, October 29th at midnight PST. I'm on Instagram. I always think this part is so funny. I'm on Instagram. It's just my name and my last name. I'm sure it'll be in the notes.
I'll be putting it all.
This is subject to change, but I love writing, especially more longer form. And I've never found a way to fully express that on Instagram, nor have it like received. So my favorite place on the internet since I started my business has always been my email list. It's where I feel like I can be more naked and just kind of let it flow. And we've had a handful of people say, I can't afford to take Money Medicine. I'm not in Eden, so I can't apply for a scholarship, et cetera, et cetera. And like, if you take everything I've written about money on the email list and print it out and kind of parse it together, you could probably create the whole program. Like, I like to give a lot of it away in my writing. It's not the same, obviously, but like the transmissions I've done this round have been really, really packed and rich. The one that just came out was called My Favorite Monster, and it was on the delusion of thinking we know what other people should be doing, and how I see a lot of people who have a lot more awareness then add in what other people should be doing with money, then get really lit up by the world and like how people are with money, and how if you don't know how to engage resistance, that can be the very thing keeping you from money.
Yes.
In the next two coming out, in one of them, I literally put into words an entire process of moving from the astral to the etheric with money pain. And so I say all this because that's where a lot of just stuff is that is free and rich. And can take you a lot of places if you just engage with it.
Yeah, I feel like your writing is so generous and so like life-giving, and there's also something really magical about, I think, coming into your containers and the sheer organization of it. I was just like, bless all your Virgos. Because I'm like, yes, we have notes, we have audio, we have practices. Amazing.
Is so important to me. That side of me doesn't get a lot of airtime because I'm not sure why. It's probably like not as interesting as other sides of me, but like that's a whole side of me that is huge and like very, very important. You were in Reveal, right?
I was in Reveal. Yeah.
Do you remember the two stories of walking into an offering, and in one you're like, where am I? Where's the door? Like, nobody's here. What do I do next? And then in the other one, you're like greeted, and there's some tea, and there's spotlights walking through.
Yes.
I think to add in like a little piece here, that's because we were talking about safety and all these other energies. I know from my experience in healing work, that feeling of I'm held and carried by this river is what allows for a greater unfolding. And it seems mundane, but something as simple as like, here's your audio, here's your notes, here's your week to integrate. It lets people, like their nervous systems, be like, cool.
Yes.
Because I've been in containers where everyone is super ungrounded and it's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yes, exactly, Pilar. It's funny you mentioned this because I feel like even as a facilitator, I've made that mistake myself, of thinking like, oh, let's just all be free. Like, let's have this oceanic Piscean party. It doesn't really work, I think, for like 90% of the population. Yeah, if you want to do that, I think, and you invite people in and it's a very tight selection process, then I think it can potentially work,
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And it puts, if you're not, if you don't have that selection process and you're not fine tuning like who's going to be collaborating, it puts so much extra work on you just to stabilize the container.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you, Pilar. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work and your brilliance. And I can't wait to have you back. Let's do this again.
Oh, thank you so much. I already told you this before, but like such a special invitation. So I'm honored. Thank you.
I'm glad. Okay. Thank you.